Welcome to Flaming Rooster Barbecue. In this session we're going to do end-to-end smoked pastrami on the big green egg. So the first bit of information you're going to need to know is you cannot cook this the day of or the weekend of because you've got to brine the meat for an extended period of time. And what is the meat? The meat is brisket. I use prime brisket. You can use choice brisket. You want to get a brisket that's anywhere from 5 to 10 pounds. This is about a 9-pound brisket, untrimmed, so I'm going to trim that down. When you do trim it, you're going to leave about a quarter inch layer of fat on it because fat is good for pastrami. It renders really well when you're cooking it. But the first step you've got to do is you've got to brine it, and you've got to brine it anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. A lot of people will tell you you can do it from 3 to 5 days. You can, from my experience and looking at Cats and how they do it, which is the best in New York, they use for 2 to 4 weeks, and it really depends on how thick your brisket is. This one is not too thick, so I'm probably going to do 3 weeks on this, so 21 days in the brine. So you want to get a food safe container, like a pot or a food safe bucket, and you want to create your brine. I've got about a gallon of water in there. I'm going to add these ingredients, and I'll put them on the stove and simmer them until everything dissolves. And then I'm going to take it off, get it to room temperature, and then I'm actually going to put it in the refrigerator and get it cold because you don't want to put that meat in warm water at this point because it's going to brine for so long, so you don't want to cook it at all. But basically you can play around with your brine. This is a brine I like to use. You can use anything, but the key ingredients you must have is the pink curing salt. So this is not pink Himalayan salt. This is actually pink curing salt that's got sodium nitrite in it. The key to that is if you don't use this and you brine your meat's going to be gray at the end instead of pink. And last time I checked, if you're going to invite somebody over for pastrami or brisket and it's gray when you're serving it, nobody's going to eat it. So this is a key ingredient. You can get this at Whole Foods or at your local grocery store sometimes, or you can get on Amazon and just Google pink curing salt. You also want kosher salt. You want that sugar. So those are the basic ingredients you must have to brine it. As well as the pickling spice. So this is a must-have as well for the flavor. And you can just get this at your grocery store. I like to add honey, and I like to add garlic. So my portions, and I'll put the link below, is a 1/4 cup of the curing salt, 2 tablespoons of the pickling spice, a cup of kosher salt, a cup of sugar, a 1/4 cup of honey, and then 5 cloves of garlic. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this all in the pot. I'm going to get it to room temperature after it simmers, and then I'm going to put it in the refrigerator and let it cool off. And then while I'm doing that, I'm going to trim out my brisket. Okay, so I put all the ingredients in the pot and I basically brought it to a boil and then turned it off. So the goal is to dissolve all the ingredients in there. You're not going to dissolve the garlic or the pickling spice, but what you're going to do is open that up through the heating process. So now what I'm going to do is just going to let this sit here till it cools off, and then once it's cool enough, I'm going to put it in the refrigerator and get it cool before I put that brisket in there. Okay, so the pot has been in the refrigerator and it's cooled, so the brine is ready to go, and the brisket's trimmed up. So literally I'm just going to take this brisket and submerge it in the water until it's fully covered. I've got enough water in there, it's covered. If you happen to not have enough water, just add cold water to it. And I'm going to put the lid on that, and I'm going to put it in the refrigerator for 3 weeks, for 21 days. And I'm not going to do anything to that water. I'm just going to keep it in there. It won't evaporate. It'll just continue to penetrate that meat with that brine for 21 days. All right, so this pastrami has been curing in this pot for 21 days, so 3 weeks in the refrigerator. And now what you need to do, because there's a lot of salt in that thing, you need to drain the pot, clean the pot, and then you want to rinse the pastrami or the brisket off with cold water. Get all that excess salt on the outside out, and then I'm going to fill this pot back up just where it covers the brisket. And I'm going to soak it for about 4 hours, and that's going to pull some of that salt out and off the skin. And I'm going to drain that, and I'm going to do it again for another 4 hours. Okay, so I've rinsed off the brisket to get all that excess spice off of there. As you can see, there it is. And I cleaned the pot. Just going to put it back in here, and I'm going to cover it up with cold water. And once that's done, covered up, I'm going to put the lid on. and I'm gonna put it back in the refrigerator for about 4 hours. I'm gonna come dump the water and do that process again so you have some clean water. So you're pulling all the excess salt out there so you can equalize the brisket tomorrow when I'm gonna smoke it. All right, now you need to make your rub. You'll notice this rub's a little bit different than my typical brisket rub in that there's no salt at all in this rub. So you've got plenty of salt in that brine. So you don't want to put salt in your rub, it's just gonna be too much. But essentially what you're gonna do is you're gonna mix all these ingredients up in a bowl, mix it with a fork, and make it smooth. But essentially what it is 4 tablespoons of black pepper, 2 tablespoons of coriander, ground coriander, 1 tablespoon of mustard powder, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, 1 tablespoon of paprika, and then 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, and then 2 teaspoons of onion powder. So again, you can prep this at any time, but just get that ready for the rub for the brisket tomorrow.
All right, so we did the 2 water baths with the brisket, and now it's the morning of. So I've taken the brisket out and I've put it on the baking sheet and patted it dry for about an hour. So we're trying to get it to room temperature. So the process from here on out is similar to what we would do for the standard brisket. So if you've watched my other video on the Franklin barbecue method, we're gonna follow that today. So essentially what we're gonna do is we're gonna put the rub on. So I put my rub in a little shaker like this. It makes it easy to apply. Essentially I'm gonna put the rub on just like I do always. So I use mustard. You can use whatever you want. You can use olive oil or whatever oil, or even just a little bit of water. But essentially I'm gonna use my mustard. I'm gonna do this all around it on both sides. But the mustard is an adhesive. You won't taste the mustard. There'll be no resemblance of mustard in the end product. It's just an adhesive of the meat. But essentially we're going to put this rub on real thick. About that thick. You're going to pat that dry, and essentially you're going to get that rub all around the brisket. And then you're going to want to get that to room temperature. So after I put the rub on, I'm going to let it sit probably an hour, hour and a half. In the meantime, I'm going to go prep the grill for the wood and the charcoal.
Alright, so that brisket's been out for about 2 hours now, and the grill is prepping. So if you haven't watched my other videos, please watch them on how to set up the wood and the heat. But essentially you don't want to get this thing too hot, so you just want to start with the fire stick. Slowly raise the temperature up and then start adding your wood. So I always smoke my brisket with oak wood. That's what I highly recommend. And that's it. So we're going to do the Franklin method today, which is I'm going to cook this at 275. I know a lot of you are thinking 225 is what's been ingrained in your brain, but if you read the Franklin book or watch my video on Franklin barbecue on their brisket, he does it at 275. I found it the flavor is just as good, and it takes a lot less time. So I've got a 9-pound brisket. It's going to take you know, probably 8-9 hours versus 15 hours. So I've got oak in there. I'm going to shut it down to get the smoke going, and then I'll put the brisket on. Alright, so I shut down the grill. Got a good steady stream of smoke coming out. All the bad stuff's burned out, so I just have some really good smoke coming out now. The grill's at about 200, so I'm going to slowly raise that up to 275. If you've watched my videos, the key with these ceramic cookers is not to get the heat up too high, because once you do that, it's almost impossible to get it down, especially for these long smokes. I'd rather put the meat on when you got good smoke at around 200 and just let it continue to rise, and then you can regulate it then. But essentially I've got 1 probe on the grill temperature, so I use the ThermoWorks dual probe temperatures. So this one goes to the grill surface, and then I've got another one that's in the meat. Now we're going to try to get this meat to 203, and we're going to do everything on the grill. If you look at what Katz's does with their pastrami, they do a steaming process at the end for about 2 hours. If you've got a ceramic cooker, I don't think it's necessary, because you've got enough moisture in this egg or in your Komodo Joe or whatever you're using to keep it steaming basically the whole time, kind of while you're smoking it, so you've got plenty of moisture. So I think the steaming at the end process is overkill when you're doing it on these ceramic cookers. But essentially, I'm going to take this brisket and get it on here. I've got that meat probe in the thickest part of the meat. And that's it. So essentially, I'm going to close that lid and get that smoke going, keep it going, and I'm not going to open that lid until my temperature gauge on this ThermoWorks says about 180, 185. So if you've watched my Franklin method, we're gonna get through the stall and then we're gonna wrap it, and I'll show you that process here in a little bit. But this is it for now. So this thing's gonna be on here for probably at least 6 hours like that until it gets through the stall. The stall should be 180, 185, and then we'll be back. All right, the brisket has been on for about 8 hours. And I've been keeping it around 250 on this one since I have more time. But as you can see, the temp on the brisket has raised to 186. So the stall happens typically for me from about 178 degrees to 185, and then once you get over that, it'll start going up. So I noticed that after it hit 184 on this one, it's going up pretty rapidly. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take it off and I'm going to wrap it in this butcher paper. I'm going to put it back in, fat side up, until it gets to 203 degrees. So that thing is looking really good right now. It's tons of moisture and good bark on that thing already. So I'm not going to get any more smoke on it now, but I will keep it on the Big Green Egg. You can also put it in the oven, but the goal is to get it up to 203 degrees in internal temperature before you rest it. So you can either put it in the oven right now, or you can continue to keep it on your grill. I'm going to continue to put it on the grill after I wrap it. All right, so that's wrapped with butcher paper. I put the meat probe back in, and my temp's about 185, 186 on this brisket. I'm going to leave it in there till it gets to 203, and then we'll start resting it. All right, it took about 2 more hours to get the temperature up to 203, but it's there now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this meat probe out. I'm going to go put it inside on the counter, and I'm going to open it up and let it rest for at least 45 minutes to an hour. All right, so it's been resting for about 2 hours. I just cut into it to see if it's right, and it is just perfect. So you see that perfect pink texture. It's marbleized with the fat. It's just perfect, and this is about as thin as you want to serve it with the sandwiches. I do it with rye bread or sourdough bread. Get some Dijon mustard, get some pickles on the side, and it's fantastic. But you could just eat tons of this by itself. It's just incredible. So this is how it's done. Again, those are about the slices you want right there. Bon appetit. And remember, please subscribe to Flaming Rooster Barbecue. Thank you.